Gene Roddenberry was an American television producer best known for creating the Star Trek television series in 1964. He foresaw technologies like sliding doors and portable computers. He projected his vision of the future through Star Trek in many ways that I believe characterizes him as a futurist. Eugene Gene Roddenberry grew up within a police family in El Paso. After graduating, he joined the U.S. Air Corps, serving as a pilot throughout the war. He later became a police officer with the LAPD and began writing television script. In 1965, he made the decision to resign from the police force and pursue writing as his full-time career. Kennedy's Frontier program was an important source of inspiration for Gene. In 1961, the nation was committed to the expansion of the space program. It was the newest frontier. In 1957, Sputnik shocked the U.S. as the first satellite placed in orbit. U.S. was falling behind. Congress responded with the NASA program under Eisenhower. Following Apollo 8, there was a drive to put a spacecraft and human beings on the moon due to the success of these programs. In 1969, Armstrong and Aldrin reached the moon, and there were 9 more projected flights in the Apollo program. Kennedy's promise to put a man on the moon inspired Roddenberry, who thought about and explored the possibilities of the future of space exploration. The original Star Trek series was conceived, produced, and broadcasted during one of the most profound crises in the history of the United States, Vietnam. In the midst of the disastrous war, Star Trek assumed a future when the Earth had become infinitely harmonious and without war. The USS Enterprise embodied itself on order, making traditional American values triumphant. President Wilson's world-state government proposed in the 20th century is also seen within Star Trek. Sci-fi writers at the time wrote about visions where all the world nations united in the conquest of space. The League of Nations was an attempt at this. The Federation would usher in new scientific development, living centers, and security. Humanity would reach its full potential. The civil rights movement made aspects of Star Trek extremely appealing. There was more to it than colorful and exotic locations and aliens. Fans explained how encouraging it was to see a black Lieutenant Uhura, a Russian Chekhov, a Japanese Sulu, and an alien Spock working together under the fundamental basis of equality that would be the characterizing ideal of the future. Spock's character reflects Gene's futurist visions of race in the future. Episodes draw on the hardship he experiences because of his being a half-breed. Ideologies of cultural differences are explored using aliens as his medium. The 1960s experiences of the civil rights movement and anti-war movement, as well as the Cold War, allowed for these ideas of the future to be perpetuated. Roddenberry challenged gender and racial stereotypes by featuring a woman as second-in-command in the 1969 episode. She was replaced by Spock, but in pre-feminist days, before the term sexism, people took notice. Roddenberry had instincts about the inevitability of women's professionalism and their authority. Much like the United States in the Cold War, Starfleet and the Enterprise are exploring new lands. The galaxy, like the American West, is uncharted. For Roddenberry, space travel represents a challenge to the qualities of mankind, as he believes that this expression would prove to have significant benefits for those in the future. The 1950s witnessed the expansion of science fiction that opened the genre to many new audiences. People that were uninterested or unfamiliar with scientific innovations could see the type of future that was being imagined. While Kennedy worked to fulfill his promises of space exploration, Roddenberry allowed audiences to participate in his view of the future to familiarize people with scientific innovations. The desire to create Star Trek technology has become a self-fulfilling prophecy. Many ideas that were once thought of purely science fiction have become a reality. Federation doctors were able to, from the cell phone to the internet. Federation doctors administered treatment through tiny wireless devices. In the 1960s, these fantasy concepts were exciting. The technologies of the future that were explored by Roddenberry have evoked the development of current devices. On the Enterprise, crew members carried phaser weapons that could stun the enemy if necessary. This tool is very similar to the taser weapon that law enforcement throughout the world uses today in various emergency situations. Roddenberry was developing Star Trek while his futurist reputation grew. He spoke at NASA meetings, the Smithsonian Institution, and the Library of Congress. From militarism, racism, peace, and sexism, Star Trek places our encounters into future space and time, where Roddenberry not only understands current events, but warns us of what is to come. Roddenberry was a futurist in the way that he looked at money. Conflict and war came as a result of capitalist desires. There is no money in the world of Star Trek, a very forward way of thinking, a future where there will be no fighting over money, and innovations will develop that will be truly beneficial to individuals rather than solely being about making the maximum amount of profit. Roddenberry challenged the racism and sexism of his time through Star Trek, demonstrating his forward thinking. The possibility of romantic relationships with somebody of an undefined gender is explored, as well as notions of heterosexual difference. Many episodes depict human and alien pairing as Roddenberry constructs his notions of identity for his future society. In his future, racial harmony and tolerance would be characterizing norms. Roddenberry was calling for a multicultural future that was different from the world in which he was living. The optimism provided for an integrated cast of characters that contributed to the overall success of the show. This provides an excellent contrast to the all-white Lost in Space series. Actor LeVar Burton provides a glimpse into the hopeful future as a child growing up during the Civil Rights Movement. He grew up in California hooked on sci-fi, where Star Trek represented one of the very few futures that included him within society. He became attached to Gene's vision and has always represented an ideal that society should work for. The way in which Gene articulated a future of equal rights, freedom from monopolistic governments, and freedom from capitalism characterizes him well as a futurist. He was ahead of his time in many ways in creating Star Trek, and in many ways that is precisely what allowed the television series to succeed. Maybe it is not so coincidental that Star Trek is identified as a single vision of the future. Roddenberry considered the world around him and proposed solutions to the ills through the Star Trek series. It was through these solutions that his futurist view was articulated and proliferated. He was a futurist not only because he was thinking ahead of his time in areas like gender equality and technology, but because he got people thinking of the benefits of these types of advancements.